Hello everyone. So today we are trying to cover that server part of basic authentication using Fast API. Let's get started. So this is covering continuation to the yesterday's part. In previous video part 1, we explored basic authentication and learned how it works and saw how to use it from a client side using Python request library. In this video part 2, we will build a simple REST API server using Fast API and we will secure one of these routes using basic authentication. And by the end of this video, you will be understanding how to extract and decode credentials from HTTP header using Fast API and authenticate users manually and protect routes with custom logic. So it will have a simple straightforward code and I'll try to keep it very simple Python code with a Fast API. Let's get into it. So Fast API setup. First we will need to install Fast API and a server to run this particular code. A server is uvicorn. How do you install? Pip install Fast API space uvicorn. Both the libraries will be installed and create a new Python file named main.py. Main.py is a mandatory. Remember that. So the name should be a main only. Otherwise, while you are running the server, you need to change it. But let's follow this in a simple way. We will now build a simple REST API with protected route that uses Basic Auth. Here, code explanation will cover these primary below points. How HTTP Basic extracting the credentials in Fast API setup and depends Fast API method and verify credentials user defined method. We will cover these two. Credentials verification, unauthorized handling and route protection. All these points we will cover in this video. Let's get into the code. This is the basic authentication REST server code, a simplest code with the exception handling, raising errors and secured protected route and public route and some simulated user store. So here I will just skim through. Let's go step by step through the important parts in the next slide. So now here we are importing all the necessary part here in the first part and creating an app which is for a REST API server application object and security credentials. This is very important and HTTP Basic is part of Fast API which is pulling the credentials as part of the server running and saving into this particular security object. And here simulated user store we are having. It is locally we are maintaining right now in this particular code to make it more simpler. We can also maintain this particular content in command line. Okay, so and the other part is like verify credentials. This is user defined function. We will talk more on this. And this is a get slash is a public route. Anytime when you run this server, global root path will give this message as a dictionary. If you send a credentials, user ID, password and you ask for a slash secure data, that route if you ask, then this particular message will come if your user ID and password is valid. And let's go step by step through the important parts of this particular code and how let's get into it. Here the import part. So HTTP Basic from Fast API security, about that we are talking. From Fast API security import HTTP Basic. This is a very important point I have told in the previous slide. Fast API provides built-in support for Basic Auth using HTTPBasic. This allows us to extract the authorization header and parse it into credentials. So here you see fast API, import fast API. Not only this, our focus is this part. Okay, HTTPBasic here. Okay, the next part is depends and verify credentials. These two functions. Inside verify credentials custom function, this particular name anything you can write. Okay, so up to you, but I am writing here the name as verify credentials function. Inside that I am creating a first variable as a credentials, and of what type, HTTP basic credentials class type, and I am filling this variable by using dependency injection function named depends, and the security variable which is come from HTTP basic, putting into this, you can see here security is equal to HTTP basic, right? So from HTTP basic whatever comes, that will be stored into security variable, that will be passed into this depends, and it will give us that credential details, and this depends of security part triggers that fast API to look for authorization header and parse the credentials, and we don't need to do too much, and like actually this fast API is giving all this framework and we are trying to use that. Okay, authorization header and parse the credentials. HTTP basic credentials gives us two fields. One is credentials.username, credentials.password. These two it will give. So now credentials verification. How do we verify? We manually check if username exists in userdb and the password matches securely using secrets.comparedigest. So this why we are doing, we can simply take this credentials.password double equal to and give that hard coded thing or whichever, but we are not doing that. Why? We will talk here. So to avoid timing attacks, that's why we are not using directly compare and we are using compare digest. And the secure note here we need to do is secret dot compare digest is important for preventing timing attacks which can reveal password length or match accuracy by measuring response time. Okay, let us see the other part. So that is why we need to use compare digest. Where did we use compare digest? You can see here. Here verify credentials is here, right? So inside verify credentials depends security we have. This security is coming here, and inside this place you see here that user remain password, you are actually user db.get. So you are passing this credentials dot username, you are passing to your compare digest, and credentials dot password also we are passing to this compare digest. And for this particular, when you say user db.get, it goes to the dictionary and get that value user db.get. So if you pass the value as admin, the respective password will come. User one is passed means the respective password will come, and whichever. So you may maintain this particular content in command line as I told. So particular thing, this comparison is not happening straight away in your code, and it is using compare digest. That is what I am talking here, which can helps us to prevent some of the attacks. Okay, that is timing attacks and finding the length and matching accuracy. To avoid that we are doing. Let's go to the next, unauthorized handling. If authorization fails, raise HTTP exception, and status code we are retaining 401, and details you can write your any fixed error message, and headers are like a www authenticate basic authentication. So this header www authenticate and basic ensures that browser or client knows it's a basic authentication challenge. Okay, so where this is, you see here your particular verify credentials, if not correct username and correct password, which means here we are comparing this digest, right? If password is matching or not. If password is not matching, this particular variable holds false. If username is not in this database, this also will hold false. False and false, obviously it will trigger inside this particular raise HTTP exception. This particular HTTP exception I am talking here in this place. Okay, so now route protection. So app is a variable for your fast API server side code, and app.get of /secure data, which is the route we are defining, /secure data, or any specific name you can give here instead of secure data. So now this particular function def protected route username colon string, which means the first variable I am defining with the type hint string. Here I am forcing this username should be a string, and again I am taking the dependency injection depends on verify credentials. This particular thing will call the verify credentials, and all that verification will happen. If success, that verify credentials will return me a proper good username. If fails, there itself it will return HTTP exception. So for example, we are taking here. So in this route depends on successful authentication. So which means if it is successful authentication, it will execute, and it gets the username. If login is valid, it will get that username, and this particular function returns a personalized success message. You see here. Okay, if it is success, function will go inside and return that valid or customized user message. Hello, this username will be passed here. You have accessed the protected resource, and inside this particular function you can write anything, which means it's a get message. You can cook up all your employee data or student data and return that in this particular return function, and you can define your own route instead of secure data. Okay, those are secure routes. Okay, yeah. Now how do you run this code? We wrote this code. So this is a very simple and compact server code using fast API. Now how do we run the code? Running the server using uvcon. How do you run? Uvcon space main colon app hyphen reload. So why main? This main is nothing but here I said main.py. Whatever the file name you gave, the same thing you should give here, main, which is nothing but main.py colon app is your global object. Okay, so hyphen reload. Now open your browser or use curl command or postman or your python client code which is done in part 1, okay, to test it. So now I am trying to do in a short way using curl. So public endpoint is curl, so I can say simply http colon localhost colon 8000. When you run your server in uvcon, it will run on 8000 by default for your this fast API. So you will be able to get hello, this is a public endpoint. Why this is coming? Your code is having this public endpoint. Hello, this is a public endpoint, like that. This message will be coming. Okay, this particular message will be coming in your browser or your command line from the curl, or even if you run in postman, you will get this message in your output window. Okay, if you run this with credentials, so which means curl -u with this user id colon password and your URL localhost and your 8000 slash your security data, which is you have defined this route in your code, right? Only one route we have defined. We can define n number of routes in fact, but right now we wrote a simplest fast API code with one single route for a basic authentication. So this is, let us say, secure data. When you call this one, what happens? Response will come with this admin. Hello admin, you have accessed a protected resource. This is the response you will get. If you use wrong credentials, obviously instead of secret 123 ABCDEF or wrong pass, something like this, admin wrong pass, and then it will return invalid credentials. Why? That is how you defined here. You see, invalid credentials. This will be returning. Okay. Detail is called invalid credentials, and the status code will be 401 unauthorized. Okay. Let us see. In summary, we already discussed this summary in part 1. Let's quickly recap. Basic Auth sends credentials in header on every request. It is simple but not secure unless used with HTTPS. It should never be used for public or production APIs. It is Basic Auth is great for quick testing and for internal tools. Basic Auth is easily implemented in Python using request library. Yeah, that's all. So final notice, in the upcoming videos we will cover more how other auth style works, when to use it, and what interviewers will expect from you. Let's learn authentication in simple way, and let's get interview ready. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Let's connect again in the next video. Thank you for watching. Have a nice time. Bye.